To achieve optimal habit change in your life, it is vital to understand your personality and which habit forming methods and best practices are best suited for your own personal self improvement journey. Four tendencies is a great framework to understand this. So let's look at table of content. So we will first look at overview of this four tendencies framework. Then we go deep into upholders, questioners, obligers, and rebels. So first look at the overview part. Four tendencies is a framework developed by Gretchen Rubin that divides all of the humanity into four categories: upholders, questioners, obligers, and rebels, based on how they respond to expectations. If you are trying to figure out how to manage your own habit change better, it's very helpful to think about the four tendencies framework. Now, all of us respond to two kinds of expectations: outer expectations and inner expectations. Outer expectations are things which are like deadline or a request from a spouse, and we also have inner expectations, a New Year's resolution, our own desire to get back into playing piano. And understanding how we respond to outer and inner expectations gives us a lot of insight into how we can change our habits and how we can manage ourselves and also work more harmoniously with other people. So first look at the upholders. Upholders readily meet outer and inner expectations. They really want to know what is expected of them and to meet those expectations. But their expectations for themselves are just as important. Now, one of the things that can happen to upholders is sometimes they experience tightening. For a lot of the people in the tendencies, they'll begin by doing something and then the rule will kind of loosen up over time. But with upholders, the rules often become tighter. Upholders need to be very careful of not becoming the bureaucrat of their own paperwork. In addition to this, upholders need to remember that for other tendencies, following through with expectations can take a little bit more work, a little bit more effort than it does for upholders. Upholders can sometimes seem cold and judgmental to other tendencies because they don't understand that for some people it's not as easy to follow through with expectations as it is for upholders. Now we'll look at second part, questioners. Questioners question all expectations. They'll do something if they think it makes sense. They hate anything arbitrary or inefficient or irrational. They want justifications. Their first thought is, why am I going to listen to you? And so, in a way, they make everything an inner expectation. Because if an expectation meets their criteria, if they are like, yeah, this makes sense, this is a good idea, this is a good way for me to use my time, they will follow through with that expectation without any trouble. But if they are not convinced, they won't. And sometimes questioners can get into trouble because other people don't understand why the questioners is doing so much questioning. So perhaps a questioner at work is seen as being insubordinate or not being a team player because he keeps asking, well, why did you pick that software and why are we doing it on Friday? Or a questioner who is at school, she might say to her teacher, why do we have to learn about Mesopotamia? And she really just wants to know, why do we have to learn about Mesopotamia? But if the teacher says something like, well, because all 6th graders have to learn about Mesopotamia, or because I say so, well, those are not going to be good enough for a questioner. But organizations need them. Now, questioners are wonderful to have around in organizations because they are the ones that keep everything efficient. They are very interested in keeping things moving in a smart way. They love fixing problems. They love streamlining. They are very interested in data. But they can sometimes drain and overwhelm people with their questions because everyone on a team may feel like, well, we have decided on this format, and they kind of lose patience if the questioner is still asking questions. So that's something for questioners to be aware of. Another issue that questioners sometimes face is analysis paralysis. They want more information and they want perfect information. But sometimes we have to make decisions without perfect information, or it's not clear what is the best course. And so, when questioners feel themselves getting that analysis paralysis, they need to use systems that will help them make decisions. Whether that's setting a deadline for making a decision, setting a limit, like we are going to interview 10 candidates for this position, but not 50 candidates for this position, or finding a trusted advisor. If it's good enough for this person, it's good enough for me. I trust their judgment, and so I don't have to feel like I'm going to spend a huge amount of time doing this research because I know that this person's judgment is worth following. Now we'll look at obligers. Obligers struggle to meet inner expectations but readily meet outer expectations. And I got insight into the obliger tendency when a friend of mine said, the thing about me is that I know I would be happier if I exercised. And when I was in high school, I was on the track team and I never missed track practice. So why can't I go running now? Well, she's an obliger. She had no trouble showing up when she had a team and a coach waiting for her. But when it was just her own expectation that she would go for a run, then she struggled. So obligers, they do very well when there are deadlines, when there is supervision, when they know they are accountable to someone else, but when they are only accountable to themselves, that's when they have problems. And this is the largest tendency for men and women alike. This is the tendency that most people fit into. So you either are an obliger or many obligers in your life. And here is the key thing about obligers to remember. If you are an obliger or you are dealing with an obliger who is having trouble meeting an inner expectation, which they are, because that's the definition of an obliger, to have trouble meeting inner expectations. The solution, the answer is very simple, and that is to plug in outer accountability, because once that outer accountability is there, the obliger will not struggle. Let's understand with an example. So, for instance, with my friend who is having trouble going running, she could have worked with a trainer, or she could make a deal with a friend like, if I go running or 4 days of a month, then we'll both have the spa day. But if I don't have to do it, then I'm not treating you to a spa day. Oh, now I have to run or else my friend is going to be disappointed. There is a million different ways to plug in outer accountability. Once you realize that that's what you need, but for so many obligers, they don't understand that that's the missing piece. It's very easy to plug that in once you recognize it. And here is a tip for obligers and all other tendencies as well. If someone asks for help with accountability, help them get it. Often people don't realize they need accountability, so they don't ask for it. But if somebody is asking for accountability, if they are saying, hey, can we get up deadlines? Or hey, I think I need to take a class to study for the GRE, or whatever it might be, even if you don't want to be the one to hold them accountable, you can be a big help by helping them figure out a way to build in that accountability, because for obligers, that accountability is crucial. Now let's come to the final framework, that is rebels. Rebels resist all expectations, outer expectations and inner expectations alike. They want to do what they want to do in their own way, in their own time. And if you ask or tell them to do something, they are very likely to resist. And so, rebels are the ones who just want to do the things their own way. Now, it's a very conspicuous tendency, but it's a very small tendency. Not that many rebel people are rebels, but a lot of things that work for other tendencies don't work that well for rebels. So, if you are a rebel, it's a very helpful thing to know. And if you are dealing with rebels, it's a very helpful thing to know. Because if you're dealing with a rebel, the more that you remind them, the more you look over their shoulders, the more you try to set up systems to control, the more you will ignite in them the spirit of resistance. And so you can imagine where a parent in all good intentions might say to rebel child, oh, have you done your homework? Oh, don't you think it's time to practice piano? And all of these reminders are just making the rebel child want to say, no, you're not the boss of me. You can't tell me what to do. Maybe I was going to go off and practice piano right now, but now I'm not going to. since you told me to. And if you are dealing with a rebel, this is what works: a sequence of information, consequences, and choice. If you are dealing with a rebel child and you wanted to give information, consequences, and choice, you have to think and say something like, well, buddy, if you go outside on a bright sunny day, you are going to get a sunburn. And when you get a sunburn, your skin turns red. It really hurts. It can blister and even pill. And then you are stuck indoors for several days while your skin is healing and your friends are outside having adventures while you can't go outside. Today, do you think you would like to wear sunscreen lotion or a baseball cap and a long sleeves t-shirt? So you gave information, you gave consequences, and you gave choice. This is what works for rebels because they can do anything that they want to do. So if they want to learn how to play the piano, if they want to do well in school, if they want to be an influencer leader, they will do the things that will allow them to do that. But here is the thing with rebels too, is that for consequences to work, they have to be allowed to experience negative consequences. And sometimes with children and with other adults, we want to rush in and fix something at the last minute. Sometimes because the negative consequences that falls on the rebel will also fall on us. But the fact is, if you want the information, consequences, choice, sequence to work, you have to allow the negative consequences to happen. Now, here is another interesting thing about rebels. When rebels pair up, they generally pair up with obligers. That's by far the most dominant pattern. If you are a rebel or there is a rebel in your life, they almost always paired up with an obliger. And that's a helpful thing to understand too, is how that pairing can work. There is a deep affinity between obligers and rebels. And the rebel tendency can be difficult because it can be difficult to manage someone who, if you asked or tell them to do something, is very likely to resist. But once you understand that, it's much easier not to ignite that spirit of resistance and really to harness the strength of rebel tendency. So you can motivate us by liking this video, sharing the video, and subscribing to my channel. Until then, see you. Bye bye.